Are you considering upgrading from your Panasonic GH5? Well, I just did. I'm currently recording on my new camera, and I thought maybe I should talk about my thoughts. It might help out some other people who are going through the same thing. So if that's what you're interested in, stick around. We can talk for a few minutes. Hey, my name's Dan. Thank you for clicking on my video. I appreciate it. I think I should probably give you a little bit of backstory first, just so you know what my situation is like, because obviously everybody's situation is different. This is definitely a casual hobby for me. About 2 years ago almost, my partner and I decided to start a YouTube channel. And, you know, like, why not? Everybody else is doing it. She loves plants, as you can tell from the background. Well, I mean, you don't know that she loves them, maybe I love them, but anyway, she loved plants. So we were thinking, hey, why don't we, make some content about this? People are looking for care stuff, and she's really in depth when it comes to learning about how to care for her plants and loves doing experiments and stuff. So initially I explored, whether or not I could get away with just using my phone. I only had a Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus at the time, and the video quality is terrible on it. And even though I'm no professional, I wanted the videos to look and sound good, right? Like, low quality YouTube stuff is I can do better than that. not to, like, toot my own horn or whatever. So I did a bunch of research 2 years ago, and I settled on the GH5. And this is a pretty sort of iconic setup, I would say. If you did GH5 research, or even if it was a few years ago, I'm sure you ran across this setup, which is the GH5 combined with a Metabones speed booster. And then this lens in particular, this is the Sigma 18-35. And I have to say, this is a fantastic lens. And overall, it's been a great setup. We've been making videos for 2 years pretty consistently. We've put out over 100 so far. The channel is Botanical Woman. If you're curious, you can check it out. Although there's more than one Botanical Woman. We're the one with the cartoon character logo. And yeah, the quality, generally speaking, has been fantastic. This, in many ways, feels like a baby cinema camera. Not that I've ever used a cinema camera, but it's a heavier setup. Even though it's got a swivel out screen that flips around, I was not particularly happy with the experience of using that. So I did buy this external Feel World monitor, which has been pretty good. And then I've got my little deity mic, because obviously the audio is terrible if you're recording in camera. And yeah, it's been good. It was a learning process for me, getting used to it. I hadn't been doing any video work in any serious capacity for many, many years. But overall, I'd say it was a pleasure to work with. The GH5 obviously is a micro 4/3 sensor. So normally a 50 millimeter lens would actually be a 100 millimeter equivalent. With the Metabones speed booster, it's a 0.71 magnification. So a 50 millimeter lens is actually closer to a 75 millimeter equivalent. This 18-35 is more like a 25-50. And then I've got a 100 millimeter macro here for the detail work. And so that's more like a 150 millimeter. So that's actually worked out really well. Obviously, no camera's perfect. And some of my biggest complaints with the GH5 ended up being the weight. And obviously, some of that has to do with my particular setup. But just these lenses are beefy, right? And I mean, when you're doing handheld work, you don't necessarily want the lightest camera. You want smooth, steady motions. But when you're trying to, run and gun and, get the camera in like interesting places and stuff, weight can be a liability. And obviously I don't have some big rig or something to balance the weight out. So weight did prove to be a limiting factor. And especially when you think about like trying to film yourself like this is not a very viable setup. Even with a sort of like mounting brace, which I tried, this lens is a little too zoomed in at 25 millimeters. It's just not fun. It's heavy and a pain. And of course that leads to one of the other issues, which is, as you probably know, the GH5 does not have a very good autofocus. It does not have a good autofocus built in, and then when you combine it with these third-party lenses, these Sigma lenses and Canon lenses, it's even worse. So this is not a camera you buy for autofocus. And generally speaking, when we're filming things, I never, ever used it, and I was fine with that. That's what you get with this package. And it in some ways makes you feel more like a filmmaker. You're setting your focus, and if you mess up, it's gonna look bad, but if you get it right, you can feel really good about it. But obviously that's a limiting factor. And the other one is the low light performance. Now, we're mostly filming indoors here. There are a lot of lights because of the plants, and we do control the lighting in here. But still, there are some times when I'd want more light, and the low light performance on this camera is not particularly good. Early on, I had it set to auto adjust ISO, and there were some videos I shot where it would crank it up to, I believe, 16 or 3200, whatever the max is, that it would go to automatically, and they looked really bad. So once I learned that lesson, I never went above 1000, and it looked pretty good, but still not great. That's my experience with the GH5. Overall great. I picked the camera and this lens up used, and overall it was not, obviously it was expensive if you're comparing it to filming on an iPhone, but it's relatively cheap, and since this tech is a few years old, you can find it used in good quality and save yourself some good money. If you do need these three lenses combined, obviously that's adding more to it. This is a very versatile, very nice lens. So when you're starting out, 25 to 50 millimeters is a great range to have. I would totally recommend just starting off with this body and this lens and the speed booster, not getting any kind of external monitor. You probably don't need the cage, and then whatever you're gonna do for the sound. That's a great start. If I'm being honest with you, I really didn't need to upgrade yet. This is working fine. We've kind of gotten a rhythm down with making videos, and we're just sort of cranking them out. But there were three things that really convinced me to upgrade, and I'm just gonna talk specifically about what I upgraded to, which is the A7S III. And that's what I'm filming on, as I said earlier, so I can't really show it to you. But the A7S III is lighter. I think the body is about the same weight, honestly, but the lenses are a completely different story. I have the 20 millimeter lens here that I bought. So you compare this to the 50, you can see, there's no question. These are massively different. It's at least twice as heavy, I would say. And the 18 to 35 is even worse. So 20 is also wider than the 18 to 35, which is a 25 millimeter equivalent. A7S III is full frame, so this is actually 20 millimeters. So holding this out for a vlog style video honestly has worked really well so far. We've had the camera for maybe 3 weeks, and we've done a variety of walk and talks, and it's still tiring, but it's nothing compared to holding this guy. So I was really excited about that flexibility of being able to move it around, it being more portable in a sense, and then having a wider lens. Obviously, I could have picked up a wider lens for this, but I was trying not to go too deep. And part of the reason I didn't buy Panasonic lenses is, well, yeah, there's the, what you need you need a 10 millimeter. I don't know if there's a good 10 millimeter native, but I was sort of hedging my bets, maybe I'll upgrade to a Canon, so I'll buy these Canon lenses and adapt them here. I wasn't sure. Anyway, this stuff's all going. I'm not gonna keep it since I've decided to go with the Sony. The next big thing for me was the low light performance. As I said, it's not the biggest deal for me, but A7S III is a low light champ. And instead of recording at 1000 and just kind of having to deal with it looking okay, A7S III, you can record it at 12,600 and it still looks really good. It can go higher than that, but I haven't messed around with it too much. I just know that there's sort of the second floor. I think I don't know if it's another circuit or exactly how it works. If you want more information about it, you should check out Gerald Undunn's videos about the A7S III if you haven't already. He provides a wealth of information about it. Anyway, the ASO kind of gets, noisier and noisier until you hit 12,600, and then it gets significantly better, and then it starts getting noisier and noisier again. It's not dual native ISO, so they're not the exact same noise levels on the two floors, but it's a significant improvement over just the steady, increase in noise and processing as you get worse and worse. The third big thing for me was autofocus. And when I started, it was okay that I didn't have it, right? And the big thing here is that you have to understand what's important for you. There's no such thing as the perfect camera. Everything has trade-offs. If you dream of being a cinematographer, running around with a $50,000 camera, Arri Alexa or whatever, or these, $5,000 lenses, the reality is that that's not a one-person operation. Even if you had all the money in the world, you would need to be hiring other people to help you. And a lens that's really good at manual focus is not the same thing as a lens that's really good at autofocus. There's all these trade-offs, and I was only starting to learn about some of these as I was researching the A7S III, because there are just some lenses that I sort of wanted that don't exist yet. Like I ended up going with a 20 mil, a 35 mil, and the 85 mil macro. It's 85 or 90. Anyway, there's like 4 50 millimeter lenses that I was looking at, and none of them were quite what I was looking for. I wanted a compact, light lens that still had really good autofocus, could manual focus if need be, because there are situations where I'm gonna want that, and I don't want something that I can't at least kind of reliably focus. It just didn't exist. Like the $200 lens was the closest thing to it, and the quality just did not seem particularly good. Jumping up from there, it was like $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,400 or something. And those are much more like either photography oriented or more for manual focus. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into this, and more power to you if that's what you're into, just researching and learning and trying to figure it out. But the conclusion I've come to is that there will always be trade-offs, whether it's in your camera, your lenses, whatever. There's no such thing as a perfect thing. And so unless you can buy the perfect setup for run and gun versus the perfect setup for filming at home versus the perfect setup for having a crew working with you, you're gonna have to make some compromises and decide what's the most important thing for you. So for me, after working with this setup for almost 2 years, the autofocus felt like a more valuable thing to have. I'm currently using it right now. Nobody is here helping me. The setup, get things going, set up your lights, get your framing right, get your audio checked out, and then you hit record. And if I need to show you a 50 millimeter lens, I'm hoping the camera will autofocus on it. And then I'll put it back down, and you can see me again. I don't have a monitor that I could check myself on, and the screen's pretty small, so it's hard to tell for focusing and stuff. But that's something that's more important now. Whether I'm filming or Christine's filming herself, we just have more flexibility to be able to do these things with a more compact setup. We don't have a zoom lens, which obviously there's nice flexibility in a zoom lens, but these lenses are good for what we're trying to do. And then the low light. So those are the 3 big things for me. This camera also has significantly better slow motion if you're regularly filming at like 120 frames per second. This camera can do that, but only at 1080, and it's all right quality-wise. The A7S III does that at 4K, and it looks really, really good. And it can record audio as well, if you like this slowed down audio. And then it can do 240 frames per second at 1080, which I've only tried once, and I was doing it in here, and a lot of these lights are cheaper LED lights. They work for the plants, but they're not intended for filming. And the thing I shot was super flickery, because obviously 240 frames in 1 second is a lot. So you need a very good quality light that's just consistently outputting. that would be something to play with in the future. It's not something I really valued much when I was considering upgrading, but I'm sure I will use it. It helps with B-roll, things like that. So it's a nice luxury to have. 120 anyway. 240 is probably overkill for most stuff. So that's why I decided to upgrade to the a7S III, and I'll be getting rid of my GH5 equipment since I can't really justify keeping both sets around, even though they are both good in their own ways, and it'd be nice to have two cameras. I am, at the end of the day, just making YouTube videos, and there's no call for me to have two entire sets of equipment that are mostly redundant. There may be some other good options to consider. I know Canon has been releasing some better stuff lately, but like I said, there are always going to be trade-offs when you're looking at technology like this. You know, we're trying to balance price versus features and, you know, weight, autofocus, and all these things, right? So at the end of the day, I really think you have to decide what's important for you. What is your use case today and in a month and in a year? And you know, why are you buying this? What is its intended purpose? And then based on that, hopefully you can narrow down your options and figure out what'll be a good investment for you. I hope this video has been helpful. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions. Either myself or maybe somebody else will be able to answer them for you. And hey, don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Thanks, I will see you next time.